Hey, Stefan, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Are we good now?
Yeah, you're good.
I'll go back. Sorry about that.
That's my bad.
As I was saying, it's Friday and you'll have a test after this, so I'm going to try and get y'all out early. Today we're doing Chapter 5, Buyer's Agency. Yesterday we did Seller's Agency. Our outline for the evening, we're going to do Buyer Representation Agreement. We're going to deciding when to represent a buyer. We'll do the creation of buyer agency, benefits of buyer agency relationships, written notification and compensation to broker and fee arrangements. We're also going to go over buyer brokers disclosures. So in a buyer representation agreement, it's going to identify the rights and obligations of the broker and the buyer. Remember, agreements between the broker and the buyer, not the salesperson and the buyer. And it basically makes you legally responsible to your client. And in the buyer representation agreement, it's basically going to outline what I can expect from my client and what my client can expect from me. Yes, there is some things that you expect your client to do. Of course, disclose everything that they know. All the information that they need to give you to purchase a property, all that kind of stuff. So there's stuff that your client has to do and there's stuff that you have to do. And this buyer representation agreement is going to tell you, it's going to outline all of that for both of you. And figure 5.1 that's in your book, it's just an example of a buyer representation agreement. But I think we have one right here. So this is a buyer residential tenant representation agreement. We have the client, all their info there, and we have the broker, not my information, that's going to be the brokerage. And most of the time, it's not even going to be Justin's name, it's going to be Noble's Realty Group, LLC. So here you can see the client grants the broker the exclusive right to act as the client's real estate agent for the purpose of acquiring a new property. So that basically just outlines this is what we're doing this contract for. And the term, that's a big one. You have to have a term. It's not valid if you don't have a term in there. And that's just going to say when it starts and when their agreement ends. Best practice for that, I believe, is 1 to 2 years to put in there. But you cannot have any blanks in the contract. If there's any blanks in the contract, then it's not enforceable. So if something doesn't apply, like if you didn't need to put anything in here, you would put NA. So you would put in there not available. Because there can't be any blanks whatsoever. Here we have the broker's obligations and the client's obligations. And that's going to outline what you need to do and what I need to do. Then we have representations and then intermediary status. You can either check yes, we're okay with intermediary status, or no, client does not wish to be shown or acquire any of the broker's listings. So that means we don't really want to see any of your listings that you have. We want to go outside of your brokerage. And if they check that, then that means, yeah, they're not okay with intermediate status. Then there's competing clients and confidential information. You never want to give away confidential information, like we said. And on the next page, we have the commission. So this is where it's going to outline the commission made by the company and by the agent. And here we have a construction notice here. That's where you would put in if the client needs to get some construction work done. you would put it in there, and that's gonna basically negotiate the construction percentage. So if I were to put 10% in there, Justin told me one time he had to do that. He put 10% in there, and he didn't know what he was doing because he was a newer agent. But he put 10% in there, and at the end of the day, when it closed, he got 10%, which I imagine was a nice chunk of change. And that's for construction. So any services or negotiating construction that you need to do, any improvements, that's where you would put it. And the service providers and the protection period. That's a big one. The protection period, that's going to protect the agent, not the buyer. So it's basically saying, like if I were to, it basically allows you to sue for your commission. So like if my client, let's say our period ends, our protection, or our agreement ends, and then my client goes and purchases a property with someone that I showed him, or through someone I showed him, the protection period, I would still be owed a commission. So a certain number of days after the end of the contract, you would still get your commission. And that's protection for the agent, not the buyer. Let's see. Here we have the addendas. So in the addendas, people will often forget. They'll check a box and they'll say, "Hey, we need this addenda," and they'll send. They'll say if Justin's your broker, you'll send them a contract, and it'll just be this page. There will be no addendas attached to it. And Justin will probably send it back and be like, "Where's the addendas? You're not done. Where's the rest of the contract?" So if you check something here, or you need something here, it is a separate form that you'll be attaching to the representation agreement. Any special provisions through the contract, and that can happen as well. And then of course we have the signing page. Right here would be the brokerage printed name, and that's not going to be Justin's name. That's going to be Nobles Realty Group if that were your brokerage. And then you can see here it says broker signature or broker associate signature. And often you'll be checking brokerage associates, and that will be where you actually sign. So, like we said, I could bind Justin into a contract without him doing anything on it. Like if I were to put there LLC and then our license number and then sign here, technically I've locked Justin into a contract, and he didn't have to do anything. He didn't have to sign anything because I'm a sub agent of him, remember? And so that would be your buyer representation agreement. So deciding when to represent a buyer, I mean, some clients can be extremely difficult. So you're going to want to pick your clients carefully. I don't have time for someone that's going to be constantly calling me. I've been there, done that. It's not fun. So agency relationship is not required to find a property for a buyer. So in other words, I can find them a property without having a representation agreement with them. And if that were the case, I can't sue for my commission, but I can still get paid if they just, if we close. But you can still represent a buyer without actually making them sign buyer rep. So the buyer-client relationship, like I said, it's not mandatory. I can find a property for a buyer without an agreement, but there's significant responsibility with it. You also want to avoid dual representation. You may prefer to work with buyers as customers on in-house sales and clients for cooperative sales. So in-house sales, it might be a good idea to not get a buyer rep, because you could end up doing a dual representation where you end up representing the buyer and the seller. So you're going to want to pick and choose when you actually want or need to put a buyer representation agreement in there. Because like I said, some clients can be difficult, so you need to have that. You need to decide when that needs to happen. Some factors to consider when representing a buyer. There could be a broker company policy. I know we have a company policy for buyer representation. A lot of brokerages will say they won't even do anything until you get a buyer rep. So let's say if I don't have a buyer rep and I've got a high-end client that drives up in his new Mercedes-Benz or a Bentley or something, and I show him a house, what happens if, say, like the gate malfunctions and closes on his car? I would be liable unless I had a buyer representation agreement.
Really? Oh, because it states that in there?
In the buyer rep, it says I'm not liable for blank, 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 stuff like that. It protects you. But so if I didn't have a buyer rep, it's on me. I'm probably gonna have to pay for this man's new Bentley. So there's some people out there that won't do anything until they have a buyer rep. They say, I won't even show you a property, or as soon as they do show you the first one, they're like, hey, you just sign here. Especially for the higher end clients, like I said, you don't want to pay for a full Bentley, that's gonna be expensive.
They twist their ankle and
That too, yeah. The broker could be the primary agent of the buyer, because remember, all listings are in the broker's name, so the buyer, that you could get a dual representation there, so you got to be careful with that. So if you're it's generally not good for your broker to represent a buyer, because it could end in the dual representation. So you have to be careful when deciding when to represent a buyer. Because sometimes there's also competing brokerages or competing brokers where you're actually competing with your broker, which some companies do that. I don't understand why. It seems like a very bad business thing to actually be competing against your broker. But they will actually have a list of all the people that you have had a client relationship with, and they'll actually try and steal them from you. It's sad, but there's some out there that do that. And Justin in here is what's called a non-competing broker. I'm not competing with him for money. So the buyer-client relationship can remain with the old broker. So let's say if I get a buyer's client, I may want to hold off signing that buyer's rep if I'm about to switch brokers. Because if I sign the buyer rep with this broker and I'm about to switch, then that buyer is going to stay with that broker. So if you are going to switch brokerages like that, it's a good idea to hold off on a buyer rep if you have a client. You may prefer to treat as customers in-house. So yeah, like I was saying, you might not want to buy a rep. It gives you more liability if you're going to do in-house sales, and you'd have to do intermediary. There's also exclusive buyer agency that may help avoid problems, such as, like I said, the gate malfunctioning and slamming on the guy's Bentley. It'll protect you from that. Also, the broker may appoint a sub-agent to find a property, and he does that often, or brokers do that often. They get leads in, and they will appoint it to one of their agents. Because you still have to split with your broker in commission, so I mean they're going to make money regardless. So those are just some things to consider when representing a buyer. So creation of buyer agency. Remember I was telling y'all yesterday, it can either be express or written. So it'd be oral or written, but it has to be written if you want to pursue a commission. So if I have just an oral contract with the buyer, I can't pursue for my commission if he were to go out on me.
So it has to be written, but not specifically in the contract.
Well, correct. Yeah. As long as it's written, but
But the text is already
you can do it by that as well, yeah. But the email is not going to protect you or the buyer from anything. You'd still want to get a buyer rep. But yeah, so if you wanted to pursue your commission for any reason, if something happens, you definitely need it written. I mean, if you want money, put it in writing. Okay, creation of buyer agency. This is representation. These are going to be the services that you need to provide to the buyer. Excuse me. You're going to want to create a clear profile of the buyer's needs or wants. That's a big one. I mean, it'll help you narrow down the search for a house if you know what your client wants. Otherwise, you're going to check all and send them 2,000 properties. And then he's going to call you back and probably want to go see all 2,000 of them. So, yeah, know what your client wants. And if you know what your client wants, you can narrow down the search greatly. I usually send max 10, 15 properties. I probably won't send too many more than that. And if they ask me to do another search, I can always do another search and send them some different ones. But yeah, sometimes if you send them 20 properties, they're going to want to go see every single one. So knowing what they want will help you narrow that down. Also, the market values. Market values mean nothing right now in the current market that we're in. Basically, that's just their starting point, and then they add 40,000 to it because we're in a seller's market. But market values are going to tell you generally what the value of that home should be in the current market. Also, financing assistance. A lot of the times people forget about the lender. They'll get the contract proceeded and say, hey, I'm good. They don't send it to the lender, and then they call 3 days before, hey, how's the loan going? What loan? We didn't receive anything. Oh, crap, I forgot to send you that. And then the whole deal is done. But you might have to push them towards financial assistance or push them towards a lender to help them out with that. You also have to structure the offer. So you're going to help them structure the terms of the offer. And you're obviously going to want to put it in your buyer's favor. There's certain things that you can change to help it in your buyer's favor. But yeah, like I said, with the current market right now, it doesn't even matter. I could give everything in favor of the seller and then give them 20,000 over what they've already gone up 40,000, and we still lose it. We still lose it. You're also going to have to explain contract documents. Clients don't know the documents, and half the time they don't even read them. Send the client a contract. They might check out some of the terms, but within 5 minutes they'll send it right back. Say, "Yep, we're good." I mean, that's a good and a bad thing. It shows your client trusts you, but they might not know what's going on. So you might have to explain that. And obviously, as I was saying, advocating for the buyer. When you structure an offer, you're going to want to advocate for your buyer. You're also going to probably have to do negotiating strategy and advice, but not legal advice. And you also need to advise them to consult other experts, like inspectors, appraisers, stuff like that, or maybe an attorney if they need to. You might have to consult them and say, hey, I can't help you with that. However, go here, and they should be able to help you with that. Hopefully they don't have to use an attorney. I haven't had it happen yet, but it's not necessarily a bad thing if they do. They might just want clarity or stuff like that. So yeah, those are some things that you need to provide your buyer when you have a buyer agency. Some more things to consider. Exclusivity. I'm exclusively your buyer's agent, and there's going to be a definite termination date. You have to have a termination date in there. Potential conflict of interest, that can happen when you're doing in-house sales, like you were saying. Also, the role of the agent and any compensation and fees that you will receive. So, creation of buyer agency. Some more key points to consider. Exclusive right to purchase, that's probably what you're going to be using. So it basically means even if they find the property on their own, you're still getting paid. Just like the exclusive right to sell. You're guaranteed a paycheck. So it's better control over the transaction, it gives you better control over the transaction. And it protects the licensee's investment of time. Some licensees, they'll charge you an hourly rate. Or they'll say up front, I'll do this for you, but you pay me $1,000 now. And if we close on a deal, then you pay me, say, $1,500. So that just means even if you walk out on me, I still get at least $1,000. And some people do that. I don't myself. I can see the benefit of it. Like I said, I had that one client that we showed probably 60 houses, and he's gone. He went to a different firm.
Did he never got anything?
Never got anything. It was mostly because the bigger firms are doing only in-house sales right now. They're selling to themselves, so they get 6%, and it's killing the smaller firms. So he wanted to go to a bigger firm to try and get a better chance of actually getting an offer accepted, if that makes sense. If he wasn't so complicated, he would have been in a house months and months ago. But, like I said, you got to pick your clients carefully sometimes. If you know that this person is going to be a hassle, you may want to just avoid it and go
So
on it.
you can deny somebody?
Oh yeah, you can deny somebody. You don't have to give them service. Of course, in the beginning, when you first start out, you're going to want everything you can get. So you pretty much take anything you get at that point. I did. But yeah, it's going to protect the licensee's investment of time. So regardless, I'm still going to get paid, so I'm going to work harder. It's an open buyer agency. It may lead to procuring cause disputes. So if we have an open buyer agency, it basically just means I'm not even exactly, it's basically like an open listing.
Is that even legal what the big firms are doing?
Technically, no, it's not legal. But the thing is, it's a hard thing to prove. I can't prove that they're doing this. We know it's happening, but I can't prove it.
So they don't put it on the MLS, it's just something between them.
No, they'll put it on the MLS. What they'll do is they'll put it on the MLS. They'll let it run for 3 days. They'll let everyone in the office know and everything. But even if, like I said, even if you put in a high offer, they're probably only going to accept an offer from someone in their firm. So, yeah. And right now it's killing the smaller firms like us because we're losing a lot of business. Some of the bigger firms are already at well over 100,000 profit for this year.
So just take out that bag and get some work.
We're trying to hustle. We have to, otherwise we may lose the office. Who knows? But yeah, open buyer agency can lead to that procuring cause disputes because you can dispute like, hey, I wasn't a procuring cause there. And then they have a sample tar form that's going to be in your book online. In the course materials. More points to consider. There's going to be a specific termination date, like I said, and that is required by TRAILA to have a specific termination date. There can also be a carryover clause, such as a protection clause, stuff like that. Those can be in a buyer agency agreement. And then, of course, if both parties agree to rescind with mutual consent, then it's either created or taken away. So if we both consent to it, then it's done. Some more key points to consider. So broker's obligations. Broker has certain obligations, of course, client obligations. Justin told me sometimes some of our agents will copy a contract that he's done and they'll send it to him. And he's like, so what are the terms of the contract? And then I'm like, I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? You wrote the contract. I just copied and pasted from what you did. You don't even know what's in it? I haven't done that myself, but
Yeah, right.
I haven't done that myself, but apparently it happens. I have used it as a reference, but I didn't copy it exactly. Okay, so
Can you reword the sentence?
well, so representation of parties, intermediary status, and appointments, if those are appropriate. Competing clients, i.e. more than one of your buyer clients desire the same property. That's a tough one. In that situation, you probably want to refer one of those clients out to someone else. Otherwise, you could end up doing a dual representation. And also confidential information. You're going to keep all that confidential, obviously. So conflict of interest, that happens mostly in the in-house transactions, like we said. There's also LIFO or LIFO approach, which is last in, first out. I think y'all go over that in next class, so I'm not going to spend time on that. I haven't had to use that myself.
I use that in the fridge.
Last in, use that in the fridge?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good rule.
Why would you want, did you let two go away? No, it's first and first out.
First in, first out?
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
So the brokerage may represent buyers and properties not listed with the brokerage. So as long as the property is on the MLS, I can show it, even if it's not in ours. A lot of people say it's like buying a car or something. You go down to buy a car, you have to buy it from their inventory. But that's not how it is if you're a real estate agent. As long as the property is on the MLS, you can show it no matter what.
So it has to be.
Do what?
It has to be on the MLS.
It has to be on the MLS for you to show it. Unless you have a for sale by owner, or FSBO as they call it.
For like, example, that girl that I was telling you about, that real estate agent that helped me buy my house.
Yep.
She knew properties were going to be for sale. And before she put it on the MLS, she was contacting my brother and asking him if he wanted it before
She put it on the MLS. There's also something called a pocket listing. There's a Facebook page. You can go on there and say, for all the realtors on BCS, and you can say, hey, looking for this, does anyone have a pocket listing? And sometimes you might find it. It's basically just a listing that they are not going to list with the MLS. It's mostly for family. If you're doing a family home, or like your family's home, that's what you would do. But yeah, if it's on the MLS, you can show it. Even if it's another brokerages and so on, it could be anywhere in Texas, honestly, because it's on an MLS. Show it. Yeah, and you may want to refer buyers out, and that's going to go up here to in-house transactions, or there could be conflicts of interest. Sometimes you may want to just give the client to another agent, otherwise you could end up with a lawsuit. So represent buyers and only occasionally take listings from previous buyers. And also more than one buyer client interested in the same property. That goes back to when you're going to refer it out. If both of them are interested in the same property. Okay, so key points to either mediate or not to mediate. Mediation happens in real estate all the time. I believe Justin actually teaches a course in mediation if you want to do that. I don't think we have any mediators in our office.
I need to do one around here, like, actually, cool.
Yep. If you're good with dealing with people and calming people down, you know, think about doing it.
I think I have a soft enough voice to be calm and soothing.
Oh yeah.
People listen to me once I'm quiet.
No, he's-
So,
Is that right?
so I was like, it would work out very well.
And I think you can actually make some decent side money with that as well.
There you
It can be your little side hustle.
Right.
Well,
You know?
Quiet.
The only thing I wouldn't want to do is mediate divorce.
Okay, yeah, that would be,
Yeah.
that might actually be something that happens often though in real
It
estate.
is, yeah, it is
You end up dealing with a divorce, it can get messy pretty quick.
very.
So yeah, so sometimes you may need to mediate or get someone who is a mediator to do that. If there's if anyone defaults in the contract and what remedies you'll do if they do default. Those are some good things to consider when doing buyer agency. Any compensation or fees and any special provisions. Is there any special provisions to this buyer agency? Those are some things you want to consider. So advantages of exclusive buyer agency. Obviously, it reduces the risk of undisclosed dual agency. The buyers get to see more properties. You're going to show them outside of the firm as well, not just inside the firm. The buyers receive broker loyalty confidentiality, which is good for them, obviously. If you have a buyer agency, as I've been saying, you get more benefits for actually being represented and protections. It's going to increase buyer loyalty, obviously, because you're their exclusive agent. So they're going to be more loyal to you in that situation. It also reduces confusion over negotiating objectives. And there's more commission options, which is awesome. More commission, more money. There's some disadvantages of exclusive buyer agency. A conflict with a buyer who later wants to sell. That can happen. Also, no dual commissions if you're doing exclusive buyer agency. So you can't get the 6% if you were to do that.
Huh.
You get your 3%. But
Conflicts with buyer who later wants to sell you.
so by that, let's say I have a buyer that I have an exclusive agency with. We end up finding them a house, and then later on they decide that they want to sell. If they have an exclusive agency, then I would have to list their property. Technically.
Okay, but y'all did it on bad terms, so that's a disadvantage of it. You have to deal with, but you wouldn't personally have to deal with them, you could have another.
You could refer them out, yeah.
Okay.
But that can get pretty confusing. Also, clients are conflict if two clients want the same property. We've said that several times. Yeah, if they want the same property, you're gonna want to delegate them out or refer them out to someone else.
I just brought it up for some reason.
Or flip a coin. That could work. Yeah. All right. Creation of buyer agency. So if it's for a single property, you're going to be representing a buyer for only one property. It's going to be a one-time buyer representation agreement. And the market area is limited to just the address of that property. This can be useful for, say, investors, or if you have an investor client. By the way, if you get one investor client, you're pretty much set for your whole career. Justin's got a pretty good one. I'm trying to find one myself, but
Who is he with?
I forget the man's name.
Because I personally know John Rickler and Lake Kathy. You know who they are? Blake Kathy is the builder, for all the cookie cutter homes around here, stop right.
Oh, she's a Sauerkraut too?
Blake is a man, but yeah.
Oh,
And then John, he's the one that's building all in, Austin's Colony over there by, they call the station, the really, really big, nice
nice
houses.
houses.
Over there, by Iola, Key Ranch.
Oh, okay, yeah,
Is it Key Ranch? Somewhere in that area. And I personally know them,
really.
so
Well, then you might have an inside track as soon as you get your logins.
we already
And like I said, if you get an investor, you're pretty much set,
have. Maybe too much work, so I'd have to, share the wealth with you guys.
right?
Yeah.
It also works great with buyer customers who want to see a for sale by owner property. It's secure, or secures licensee agency status with at least the buyer, but the seller remains a customer. And like I said, this works well with investors who sometimes say, hey, I just want to go see this one property. You could do a single property buyer representation. It might be better that way. Because then it's just one and done. So like I said, you get it, just put in a contract. Other than that, hey, I'll call you next time I want to go see one property. But often investors will be buying several at the same time. But like I said, this could be useful in that situation. All right, so benefits of buyer agency. So these are going to be the agency benefits to the buyer tenant. It's tailored for the buyer rep contract. It gives you access to a larger market. You get stronger negotiating strategies. You have fiduciary duties, confidentiality, and more counseling and less selling. Sometimes you may have to counsel your clients. I've had one text me saying, hey, my marriage is going in the tubes. And I got to end up talking to that person for a little bit and be like, hey, come on, we can do this. You're good. Let's just keep going. Just keep pushing forward, stuff like that. Sometimes you may need to counsel, and you may, actually, I can almost guarantee you're going to end up counseling in your career as an agent.
Everything's like, yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Plenty of it. Yeah. You'll hear some stuff. That's for sure. So some issues to consider with a buyer tenant agency. It's not essential for a valid contract. Earnest money is not essential for a valid contract, but it is a good idea to put it down there regardless. So it provides a non-judicial remedy for the disputes. So if someone backs out or they breach contract, you would get the earnest money. It's important discussion points with the buyer and the seller. Large amounts of negotiations versus small amount of risk. Also avoid giving deposits directly to the seller. And when appropriate, ask seller to deposit sufficient sum to cover buyer client costs due to a possible seller default. Remember, you don't want to take money from a client in any form.
There was something else I came across when I was selling my house. The seller did not want to put any down payment. So they didn't pay any money.
They didn't put any down payment?
Nothing. And they said if I wanted to buy the house, then I would have to take over their down payment. So I went ahead and put it into the cost of the loan, but I still have to put the earnest money and my down payment down.
Well, is it 20% down payment or 3.5%?
I did
3.5. Yeah. If you're doing like a land contract, often you'll have to put 20% down. But if it's a residential, the average is 3.5, around 3.5.
I didn't know that was even a thing where the buyer can, or the seller can, omit that. I thought they were like forced to pay something, but I guess it's just something that you gotta agree on.
It depends on the lender and the situation. But yeah, I haven't run into that myself, but I guess it does happen. Most people are gonna want a down payment. Most lenders are gonna want a down payment of something, at least 3.5. So here's some more issues to consider. I'm not gonna reread those. A lot of those we did. I mean, you might wanna consider if it has pests, any property condition, title issues, stuff like that. So examples of client level service. So price and appraised value. These are going to be examples that you're going to give to your client. Service that you're going to give to your client, not to a customer. This is going to be someone you have a contract with. Seller financing and earnest money, condition of the property and any contingencies that there are, any fixtures and inventory of the property. Research, investigate, and disclose. You'll need to do that as well. And then compensation, especially if more than one party is involved in the transaction. Benefits to the buyer's agent. Obviously, greater loyalty. It helps avoid conflict of loyalty and no vicarious liability because you're working together. Written notification of compensation to the broker and fee arrangements. Texas law says a listing broker, the listing and the buyer agency contracts need not to be written. So they don't have to be written, but obviously you're going to want to have it written. There's also a fee splitting between the brokers. If there's any fee splitting, if there's any fee at all, honestly, that's when you want it in writing for sure. And there could be a procuring cause. As long as you're the procuring cause, that effort that brings about the desired result. And there can be disputes over procuring cause. That can get pretty nasty sometimes. But it's generally not an issue if the contract is written. So it provides more protection. It's just a good idea to get it written. And if you want it enforceable, then it must be written. Pretty much anything, yeah, you're gonna want it written. Even paper trails back and forth between agents. I've been keeping emails and we put it in our correspondence, so. And sometimes we just, when I say I'm gonna call my client and Justin's like, no, text them, we need it in writing.
That's hard.
Yeah, sometimes you have to do that.
It's so much easier to call. Then they call you trying to get you to explain.
That's happened to me, yes.
In that situation, since you already have it in writing, or
I mean,
do you have to continue the conversation?
it depends. It really depends. Like, but there's not much you can do if your client calls you and starts doing that. At that point, it's like, well, okay, I'm gonna have to talk to him. Maybe get a record button for your phone. I don't know. I think you can record.
Yeah, you can just let them know.
Yeah, I'm recording this conversation. Yeah, so I don't know.
Dang.
Just in case you cuss.
Yeah, well,
Yep.
probably gonna get cussed out at some point in real estate.
Every profession.
True. So fee arrangements, there could be a retainer fee. And the retainer fee just says, like I was saying earlier, you pay me $1,000 up front and then $1,500 if we close the deal. Just so if you do back out on me, I still got $1,000. So seller paid fees, that's mostly what you're gonna see. If the seller's, vast majority of the time is gonna be the one paying the commission. They pay 6% of the sale to all the agents. Commission split, any buyer paid fee, like an hourly rate or a percentage fee. Any flat fees, either contingent or not. And disclosure fee. You have to disclose what you're making or what the fee, what compensation will be received for your services. That must be in writing as well if you want to sue for commission. So there's a net purchase price and then there's a gross purchase price. I don't know, did y'all go over that stuff in finance at all?
No,
Not really.
not net and gross.
I think y'all do in principles of real estate. So I'm not going to go too much detail of that. Because yeah, you'll have a test coming up. Trying to get y'all out a little bit early. Knock on wood. So buyers, brokers disclosures. There's a statutory written statement about brokerage services. Like I said, not a disclosure, but information that has to be required. Also, any disclosure of agency relationships, disclosures in advertising, property condition, pricing opinions, title issues, and the status of the real estate licensee or professional in the transaction. Or if there's anything personal in a transaction, if they have any personal relationship to anyone in the transaction. Disclose to your broker, just disclose to your broker, pretty much. If you have a question, go to your broker. They can probably answer it. Yeah, he's got a million degrees. Pretty much everything. He's working on some more, yeah. All right, so we're getting up pretty early. We're going to go over the key points, and then we have several discussion questions. We'll get y'all out pretty quickly. You know, get that test going. So key points for this evening, what? Our key points for this evening, agents need to be more selective, like I was saying. Select your clients carefully. Unless you're in the beginning, then just take whatever you get, trust me. Whatever you get. You may be combined with seller representation in the same office. That can get a little confusing and a dual representation. So one thing that's right for one buyer is not going to be right for every buyer, obviously. In writing is better than oral. If you want to sue for a commission, remember writing. Avoid unintentional agency in-house. That's where you're doing in-house sales. You might have to refer it out to another agent. Also disclose buyer agency to a listing agent at the initial contract point. Look for compensation from buyers rather than sellers. So those are our key points for this evening. Just suggestions for broker, we're not going to go, we're going to skip that. Well, I mean, the opposite. Yeah, we'll skip over that. All right, discussion questions. Let's see. Ms. Beard, how you doing today? Yeah, sorry. All right, you want to do this one?
Sure.
What factors should an associate of a large multi-office consider when deciding to represent a buyer? It's a hard question. So what if, let's see, so if it's a larger multi-office firm, what can you expect that firm has a lot of?
Well, legal assistance.
Yeah.
Agents.
Agents, yeah. Close. Listings. So if your multi-office has a ton of listings, what can happen or what might happen?
It was definitely get sell.
Yes. So I'm talking more of like some conflicts that can happen.
Things get lost, misconstrued, miscommunication.
Yeah.
Um,
What about, how about potential dual representation happening or something like that?
yeah, that's true.
You could possibly get into some legal trouble.
Mhm.
So when you have a big office and a lot of listings, you just got to be careful about dual representation and stuff like that. Can get you into trouble easy.
As in the office, as the broker, being a dual representative, not as an agent.
You can accidentally pull your broker into a dual representation just by your actions or something that happens. And that's much easier to do with a bigger firm because they have a ton of listings and a ton of agents.
So if I had a seller
Mhm.
and you had a buyer, would that be considered dual representation?
If we're both from the same office, then yes, in that situation, you would have to do intermediary because the contract is under your broker's name. So he's technically the agent for the seller, and you would be the agent for the buyer, but he's actually representing the buyer too because he's the broker, and so anything is in his name. So yeah, you would have to do intermediary status for that. You have to.
So that's technically what the big agencies are doing right now.
That's what they're doing. So they get all 6%. Yep. It's happening.
I'm pondering. We can discuss
You're
it.
pondering.
Discuss it.
All right, Wyatt, you want to do this one?
That handle the situation. I don't know if this is gonna help you, or if you do this for it.
So that the owner wants to sell the property, but they refuse to list it with a broker. What can you do in that situation?
So I'm gonna try to persuade her to listen to her.
Well, you could do that. Yeah. Yeah. What else could you do?
I feel like I haven't.
So if they refuse to list with a broker, they're doing a for sale by owner, right?
Yeah.
What can you do to still try and keep that client? How would you handle that? How would you do that situation? That's a tough one too.
Yeah, I'm confused. Like, I was,
Okay, so let's say they come up to me and they are wanting to list their property, but they absolutely refuse to sign a buyer rep. I could say, all right, how about this? How about you let me market your property? I come out and take pictures. I try and find a buyer, and I won't take any commission from you. I will just take a commission from the buyer. So basically saying, I will put it on the market, allow me to market it, but I won't take any commission from your side. I will go and find a buyer and bring the buyer to you and then take commission from them.
it's like setting yourself up,
Setting yourself up, giving you,
getting out there, and then also just putting the seller straight too.
Yep.
Gotcha.
that'd be a great way to keep their business, or at least possibly keep their business. We actually have 6 discussion questions today, so we're getting there. All right, who we got online? Gio, what's up, man?
What's going on?
How you doing?
Good about yourself?
Good. Think you can do this one? How do the local MLS rules cover the situation of a listing broker splitting fees with a MLS participant who represents a buyer?
Yeah, I'm not too sure about this one.
Okay, so in the MLS, it's going to state what you're going to make as a commission. So whatever is in the MLS, you can expect to be paid. So when they put it up there, of course, it's not always going to be 3 or 6%. But whatever is in the MLS, you can actually expect to be receiving compensation for. The starting commissions, like I was saying, they're outlined in the exclusive right to sell agreement, but whatever they put on the MLS is what you'll receive as a commission. So yeah, it's a bit of a tough one. All right, question 4. Does Texas law require buyer-broker agreements to be in writing? Does it require it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No? Everything else is being wrote?
Remember I was saying you can do an express buyer
Oh, it's like the,
agreement?
if I act like your agent.
If I act like your agent, then I am your agent.
Yeah.
So, of course, like I said, you can't sue for commission if you don't have it in writing. But technically, it does not have to be in writing. An actual contract, you would need in writing to be enforceable. So, yeah, it doesn't have to be in writing, but it would be enforceable. Suppose the only fee involved is the commission split with the listing broker. If that's the case, you don't need a buyer rep. You don't need a written agreement because just one person's receiving it. If there's multiple people receiving commission, then you would probably want one to outline what there is and what there isn't. All right, number 5. We're almost done, guys. I know y'all got a test, and good luck on that one. It's the finance one, isn't it? Or, yeah, that's going to be a fun one. When is the best time to discuss your agency status with the buyer? That's a car one.
I didn't even get to see the question.
You got lucky.
I think I hit a button that I shouldn't have.
Let's go here, sir.
All right, this one's yours, Carlon. When is the best time to discuss your agency status with the buyer?
Before signing their contract?
In the very beginning.
Yeah.
You got it. You would want to do it in the very beginning because that way it's going to outline what both of the parties need to do.
Or to avoid loss.
Or to avoid a lawsuit. All right, last question. How can procuring cause disputes arise in a buyer agency situations? That's a tough one. Anybody online know this one? No? Nobody? Okay, so you can have procuring cause disputes, especially with in-house sales, like you were saying. So suppose the buyer views a property at an open house and then later talks to the listing agent at length, and then returns to the buyer's agent to negotiate the offer. That other agent could say, oh, I talked to that buyer. You weren't the procuring cause, I talked to them. And that could cause some procuring cause disputes, and you'd probably end up losing your commission over that.
So they didn't have the answer.
To what?
So they didn't have the answer.
Basically. But all right, that is it. That is it for tonight. We got to appoint a bit early. That'll give you all some time. We got a weekend, so we'll see you on Monday. And good luck on your test, guys. It's gonna be a tough one. So
Appreciate it.
I don't envy you, but good luck. And we'll talk to you on Monday. Bye.
It's the best advice you give so far.